Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Book Show, episode 556. I'm Bryan Cohen from Best Page Forward, joined by the master of malice, David Viergutz. I'm really excited to have you back, sir. We had some really interesting conversations last week. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I liked our chat. It was interesting and fulfilling, so there's a lot to it.
Good. Yeah, that's what I go for. Interesting and fulfilling. I have a checklist here and two boxes. Now, I love that you talked a lot about direct or a little bit about direct as having been a contributing factor to building up 20 to 30,000 people on your email list that later led to you being able to launch Scare Mail, where you mail these stories out, you being able to reach out to your readers directly, even via text. What would you say for an author starting out right now who's like, I get it. David says, build a community. I need to build a community. I need to build a list. What would you do?
So when I first got started, I was really struggling around this idea that I need to be pulling in as many emails as possible.
Hmm.
It was very difficult organically through Amazon to say, yes, I can measure how many people are coming onto my list through Amazon. And so what I thought about was like, okay, I'm in a smaller genre. What if I make each person that I come on special? What if I may only get 100 this month, but what if each one of those 100 was more important than the other 100 authors that they're subscribed to? Or if I made myself like that for them. And so I would focus on every single one and just letting them know that they're appreciated, because there's a human at the other end of that email.
Yeah.
And so if you can do anything to enrich a relationship, as far as you feel comfortable, but you may have to go a little bit, you may have to be a little, go a little bit beyond your comfort level to do that. But make every email count, because at the beginning, the first couple are hard. The first
Yeah.
couple are hard. And then servicing just those first couple, that's even harder when you're like, my list isn't growing and I have this email blast I got to spend time on. There's only 10 people on this list. What do I do? And you're like, you send the damn email and you let
Yeah.
those 10 people know that they're the only 10 and that you appreciate them. So yeah, make it count, make your efforts
Yeah.
count, even if it's just at the very beginning.
Quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. Question we had a couple weeks ago in the show, and I'll ask you this one as well, David. If money was no object and you could hire a coach for your author career, what is the most valuable thing that you feel they could help you with? Heather Hadley said, accountability, deadlines, moving the needle forward instead of dithering. Linda Caston said, critiquing each chapter for the most page-turning manuscript possible. And Anne-Marie Eber said, formatting. David, what's your vice, your career vice, I suppose, that you'd want someone to help you with if it was no issue?
Yeah, so I would want to surround myself. I want to surround myself with people who are like me, or people that I want to be like. And so I would try and find a coach who is in a position that I would want to be in the future. You're paying for the fast track, right? Instead of learning all those years the hard way, you're paying for a fast track to get you to that place and learn from that individual. So
Yeah.
as far as them, they should have something unique they should be putting into practice regularly, and they should be also innovating in that space. If they're teaching you old things that don't apply anymore, then they're not really helping you move forward, right? Moving the needle forward. They're actually could be teaching you old concepts that don't apply anymore. So you should find somebody who is an expert in their craft and is dedicated to keeping that craft as current as possible.
I love that. I love that question or that answer. I think it goes back to you are the sum of the five people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And if you're just
Yeah.
around people that are kind of doing nothing, then it might rub off on you.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just a one-sided relationship of,
Oh, of
you
course.
intake information from that person. It's also kind of a checks and balance too. If you're trying things, that coach should be there to say, hey, this is something that's worth trying, right? You don't want your energy to go to waste. And so a coach should help you save a lot of that stress, a lot of that heartache of learning things the hard way. and kind of steer you in the right direction. And so that's why they're a coach. They're not a contractor, right? I mean, a
Right.
contractor is someone you pay to do a job specifically, so you don't have to. A coach is someone who's going to lead you down that path while you're doing the thing that you need to do.
Yeah. Good call. Good call. Awesome. Well, let's get into the top story of the week, which is why we're going to call this episode Death and Taxes.
I love it.
Deductions made easy. When it comes to taxes, there are a few things to keep in mind that will make things quicker and easier so you can get back to writing, according to Written Word Media. Seasoned CPA and author Ashley Guyon suggested starting with her golden rule, which is to separate your finances. Quote, one of the most important and effective steps you can take to legitimize your author business in the eyes of the IRS is separating your business and personal expenses, end quote. Start by opening a bank account for your royalties, book sales, and expenses. This simplifies record keeping and helps you find all your deductions more easily. Quote, nobody remembers what that $36 Amazon purchase was for in January when they're doing the taxes the following year, says Guyon. Speaking of deductions, authors, especially self-published ones, can take advantage of a variety of them. The costs associated with marketing, office supplies, your computer, software, payments to your editor, and even trips to conferences can all count. Quote, taxes may never be the highlight of your writing career, but they don't have to be a source of stress either, writes the author. You can make the most of the deductions available to you, end quote. David, are you in the same boat as me where I'm starting to look at, all right, it's almost the end of the year. I made this amount of money. How can I buy things so that I don't have to pay as much in taxes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's at the phase now where I'm looking at that tax bill and say if I don't deduct something, it's just all going to go to nothing, right? To the government. Here's your fat check, enjoy. So yeah, I mean, but it's not just a matter of spending money, right? We know that. It's also about, can we reinvest back into the business? So we have that benefit. The benefit is the government says, hey, I want your tax money. And you say, I've got some stuff that I bought that helped grow my business and applies. And so if you can find things to deduct, you shouldn't be doing it. I very quickly had to deduct a trip to Aruba, but it's for a conference. And so I'm going to Aruba, so that's what you can do. It's very powerful. A lot of people, they don't have to be afraid of tax season. I'm not a tax expert by any chance, but I paid a lot of money to the government. And so I can tell you that taking advantage of these things is not a bad thing. It is okay to spend money on things that grow your business. That's what makes this taxes actually kind of great, is that you can deduct things.
Yeah, and I think for folks to keep in mind, I'm not a tax expert either.
No.
I used to be just a regular sole proprietor, used to be an LLC, now LLC with S Corp designation. When you are a regular LLC, you have to pay a lot of self-employment tax, as which I don't have to pay as much now that I'm a S Corp. And so it becomes even more important to almost make your business not have made nothing, but to bring that lower, because that self-employment tax really eats things up. That's where it really cuts into things. So, David, I want to ask you, as your business has grown, as you've grown, how have you tackled financial issues like taxes, savings, retirement, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of had an interesting journey this year. I was kind of in the same spot where I was like, hey, I'm a sole proprietor. Everything's fine there. I had a DBA, so it looked professional, fine. But there were certain tax savings I was not able to take advantage of until we reformed the business. I guess you call it official. A lot of authors want to jump into an LLC when they're making 10 grand a year. And it's like, it's not really worth it at that point. You're paying additional taxes for no reason.
Right.
And so, consult a professional on how much that could be. But, in the state of Texas, I also don't have income tax. So through the state. And so that's a benefit that we had to consider when we were kind of forming this business. And, and for a while there, we were at an S Corp because it was tax beneficial. And then for about 2 months later, we were like, okay, we're gonna have to go with a C Corp just for the flat tax rate for the, and then the other things, consideration too, when you're forming and the tax laws and the stuff that kind of affects you from a federal level, you have to look at what is federal policy saying on corporations? Is it worth it to incorporate? And so that is something that we also had to consider. I've got a team now, a staff of 10. And so when you've got a staff of 10, there are tax benefits to take advantage of there when you're paying these salaries. And so, yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've kind of had to learn about too is not when people say cash flow, right? They say cash flow, but it's very much kind of this thing: money comes in, money goes out. But it's deeper than that. I've found that my business can operate on a negative cash flow for a very long time, and everybody can still be happy, and everybody can still get the things that they need because of the expenses involved.
Yes.
And so you have to get comfortable with that initial, like, oh my gosh, the business is a negative, but you're like, but I know, I have good faith that the things that I'm doing are producing X amount, and you can only estimate that, right? But you make a good faith judgment on it. And I had to get over that and say, oh man, like I'm operating the negative right now, but I know that that next paycheck is that next time that cash infusion is coming, that next thing that I'm going to sell, I can project that. And so cash flow becomes this thing you play with instead of this thing that you're kind of afraid of. And so that's, and then with that, you can also, it comes with not living outside of your means,
Yes.
and treating this business like a thing that can go away. It can fail. It can flop. And if you treat it like that, then you start preparing for that by saying, okay, if the sales suck today, what can I do? If I know I need that cash infusion, what can I sell? And so that's where innovation comes in. But plan for the rainy day, plan for the business to fail, hope that it doesn't, and and treat it as an entity that can grow. It's not just an extension of you. It is a thing on its own.
Yeah. Which I think is good for mental health as well. Not connecting the business, saying the business is me, because then if the business dips, you feel terrible about yourself.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like we hit on it a little bit, but you and I are in two different unique situations. Every author is going to have their unique situations, but what do you think? At what point should the author be like doing more than just separating the money? When should they form? My tax lady said, "Hey, 50,000 a year, but maybe you should have. Maybe you've got some other ideas. You've had a few businesses, and seen them evolve. Like, what are your overall thoughts from a consumer's perspective, not a tax professional's perspective?"
Absolutely. Same. Yeah. So I think that to a certain extent, there is a mental jump that occurs when you at least take some steps, either being a sole proprietor or being an LLC or whatever. There is something that you and your brain start to take things more seriously. So I think that is a consideration, even if there is a chance it comes with some more taxation negatives. I think that we do want to prove to ourselves and the people around us that there is an opportunity for this to be a real thing. And so I do think that's a consideration, but you don't want that to be to the point that, oh, I was going to make $1,000 and now I made negative 1,000. We want to be conscious of those things. But generally, I agree with you, David. I think that when you are not making any money for years and years, you're not necessarily going to have the magic silver bullet. Oh, I started an LLC and now I'm making money, because that's not really how it works. You have to look at where you're at financially. You have to talk to a professional, either an accountant or a financial advisor, who is outside of yourself, ideally one who has worked with an author and might know these kinds of situations, because you can listen to people like us all day long, but we are not professionals in this way. And so you have to consult a professional.
Yeah, absolutely. And that person should be heavily invested in saving you as much money as possible. If they're in the business of selling you additional services, then they are not on your side. They should be firmly between you and the government.
Yes, 100%. Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm glad I learned that before I had to hire these people, because I'm not certain that people in my family did know that. But hey, if their financial advisor gets a nice new condo, then good for them, I suppose.
Right.
We got a lightning round. We need a lightning sound. You want to give it another shot, David?
No, I'm good. My last one from last week is plenty embarrassing.
Yeah, we'll replay it now. So
clip it in.
Yeah, exactly. We'll loop it. David, are there any book marketing challenges that are unique to horror authors?
Yeah. So I love this question because I figured out the solution, and here's the solution. For every horror author, person who wants to write horror, the issue with writing horror is not your books, and it's not the channels you use to market your books. It is convincing the reader that horror is an okay genre to read. That is it. The
Mm-hmm.
reader has been largely told, just through whether it's society or whatever, that there are certain things that are okay. There are certain things that are taboo, and that you are alone in this corner and you must stick to this thing, and you must avoid horror and taboo stuff and spicy romance and kind of stick with these safe genres. These are okay for you. Um, when I do a lot of in-person shows, or I did for a long time.
Yeah.
Every week I would try to go do an in-person farmers market, and I would
Yeah.
sell between $400 to $600 in books
Hmm.
for a couple hours of my time. And if you're willing to lug your books to a farmer's market for a $60 table and stand in the Texas sun for 6 hours, you will learn a thing or two about readers, and that is that they don't know what horror is.
Hmm.
They don't understand it. They think of it as just these couple of things. They think of it as it's Stephen King and it's scary clowns, and it's slashers. That's what they think horror is, and it's so much further than that. And so, if you can spend some time with those readers, especially if you write right down the middle of horror, where it's like kind of mainstream, general, paranormal, and monsters, and you kind of dodge the extreme end, or you dabble in it just a little bit, or you dodge the cozy end, but you maybe dabble in a little bit, but you stay right down the middle. You can convince a lot of people to give a horror a shot because at one point in time they were likely burned by the genre. They read or saw something that they didn't like. And
Yeah.
horror is so much more than that. And so the challenge isn't necessarily, is it Facebook ads? Is it Amazon ads? Because I know quite a few horror authors that are doing very well. They don't necessarily like to talk about it because a lot of them are unsure why they're doing very well. But I think it's because they reached that reader, and that reader was convinced in that time that they said, this is okay. It's okay to read this, and this is what I like. And people have to be okay with that. So, I mean, that's it. That's really it. Convince the reader.
Yeah. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm ready for your question to
Yeah, I
me.
was going to ask you. I've written a nonfiction book, but I don't really dabble in that space too much. And I know you're rooted in it. You're stuck in it.
Hmm.
And so I was going to ask you, horror is unique in that way. Are there unique challenges as far as it for nonfiction authors, like the stuff you guys produce? What do you experience?
So, two things with nonfiction books. One is a similar challenge to horror. There are readers out there who think, oh my gosh, I just need to figure out a solution on my own. It's wrong for me to go read a book about it to solve the problem. Which is interesting because I've always been, no, I can find the answer in a book. So there is that side of it. But then the second one is the opposite problem. You have people who will buy a nonfiction book on a subject and then buy 6 additional books on that subject and read them and never take action on any of them. And so my challenge as a nonfiction author and a course creator is to actually get people to take action. And I have gone too far many times. I have put my own business, my own career on the line saying, if I give them one more live session or if I give them one more group to participate in, maybe then the horse will drink the water. But it doesn't always work that way. And so it isn't a balance between you. I had a coach once who told me, well, Bryan, if they don't listen to you or they aren't interested in going further, it's not their time. And I like that because I am the kind of personality that wants to save everybody. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of good to know, okay, maybe their time will come a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets really easy to kind of get caught up in the what do they call it, the I guess kind of like the hustle porn, right? Is the people
Mm,
who are you're watching the people who are doing these things, and it becomes addictive to watching them succeed, and you're like, and you just sit there and
yes.
think about it, right? So it's instead of writing a book, you think about writing a book, and it becomes addictive to thinking about writing a book and never actually writing it. Same thing with the self help and the nonfiction is like, if I just read one more book, then I'll have all the
Mm,
knowledge I can start from the beginning with everything that I need. And so you end up getting caught in this loop of not doing anything except reading the book, and that doesn't help you. You got to put it into action. You got to put it into play.
yeah. Yeah, no, I like the way you put that. Um, we won't even bleep out hustle porn. No,
Oh,
just
I'm
kidding.
sorry.
No, it's not. I'm joking. I'm joking. Um, we talked about this a little bit. You know, you sell books on your website. You've gone to all these markets. You've had scare mail. Um, you're not so sure that the subscription platforms like Ream are going to stand the test of time. What do you think is kind of the challenge of these ongoing payment platforms like Ream and Patreon, etc.?
Yeah, and so the I think a lot of people jump in the subscription and say, "Oh my gosh, this is a great sustainable model. Netflix is doing this, Amazon is doing this," but the problem that they will have is that these platforms are in constant competition with each other. If
Mm-hmm.
they have to really separate the type of content that they offer. Netflix and Hulu offer two different types of services. They offer many different types of services in the form of the content that's available there. So
Right.
the author has to do the same thing there. So if someone else were to find a subscription that's like mine, then that author and I are technically in competition with each other because we have that reoccurring revenue. Now, the way we get around that is by saying, okay, it's not in the offer that these people are subscribing. It's
Yeah.
because it is so unique and exclusive that I can only get it from this author. And so, for me, I think you've got to stand out before
Yeah.
you can stand amongst when it comes to a subscription. It is not an easy ask for someone to say, I want you to pay me every single month, this amount of dollars. That is a
Yeah.
transaction that they are getting emailed about every single month. That is something that they're going to see in their bank statement every single month. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you have not solidified yourself in these readers' minds as somebody worth following, that they must support regardless of what is offered, you're not going to be able to do it. A lot of people, I coached some folks before on starting subscriptions, and they struggled. People with these loyal followings, hundreds of thousands of people on their list, and they could not get one subscriber. And
Oh
that's
my
because they
goodness.
focused on the offer. They hadn't brought that person, that reader on as a super fan and said, this is something that you can't get somewhere else. This is in support of me, not, hey, you get 20 ebooks for $3 a month or whatever. They're not interested in that. These are a different type of reader.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that makes all the sense in the world. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I was going to ask you too, like the subscription model is quite a bit different, and there's a lot of folks who might be asking, like, is it time to jump into this? Should I do this now? Or is it something that I should wait until I'm a little bit further in my career? I mean, in your experience, when do you think an author should create a subscription? Or is there a certain point that they need to get to in their career before they should jump on board?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you brought up the author with 100,000 subscribers and they weren't even able to get one. I think that you're absolutely right that there may not even be a time where this is going to be a sustainable thing for authors. There isn't like, oh, you've passed the subscription point where now you can get recurring revenue. You need super fans, and not every personality type is one who cultivates superfans. And so I would definitely err on the side of not setting up something where you have to contribute to it all the time, because that scares me personally to be able to do that. I like having a start and an end date to things. We're going to do this for 6 months and then it's over. Feels a lot better to me than, hey, we're working together forever now.
Yeah.
So that's just my my feeling there. But David, to kind of round us out here, you have been successful with multiple marketing experiments over the years. What do you think is kind of next for you, or is it just developing further what you already have?
Yeah. So like I said, I like changing and trying new things. And I think going deeper into the
Mm-hmm.
content and what can be produced, I'm very interested in things like immersive audio. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
interested in ARGs and taking
Yep.
my content and associating them with myself and my reader base to create this new thing that wouldn't be available anywhere. So that seems to be a recurring theme I keep mentioning, is just only I can produce this, and it's never just a book. It's always more than a book. It's always it's a story, right? And it's a story that can only be told certain ways. And so I think it becomes a I want to go further with the reader experience.
Yeah.
Reading is just the beginning for me. I want them to check the mail. I want them to listen to the audio. I want them to make drawings and fan mail and watch a movie and listen to the music. I want them to have all of this. And so it's going deeper, taking my content and going another level with it. And so I can't really speak much on that because I don't know what that looks like, but I know technology is making it so much easier to do so.
Yeah, that's for sure. That is for sure. Cool. I've just figured out to ask, but yeah.
Yeah.
So we need a question of the week to ask our folks. I know last week we asked about what other things could we be doing for that more immersive experience. What do we want to ask for this week? What are you interested in here, David?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in emerging platforms, in emerging markets, things that were largely untapped before. And so I'm really curious to find out what people are doing outside of the norm, not just kind of what they're experiencing with, but like right now, I have a huge presence in the Netherlands. I never expected it, but I did a quick Google search and it saw that how large of the population was English speaking. And so I said, well, let me try to market to them. And it was amazing how many people were like, I want this. And so I tried the same thing with haunted houses. I reached out to haunted houses and I've been able to sell my products wholesale now to haunted houses. So that's a market I never considered. So who else can you reach out to that might be interested in your stuff, that maybe you could sell in bulk, maybe you can sell in wholesale? And so, can you get into a Spencer's? Can you get into Costco? Where can you go that is largely looking for what you have? And so I'm really curious if anybody's really experimented with any of that stuff, or is it just me?
I love that. No, I'm sure it's not just you, but I'm really excited to hear what folks say. So what are you doing outside of the norm to reach readers? You can answer that question of the week over at Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. David, it has been a delight to have you these couple of weeks on the show. I love the perspective you bring. I can't wait to see what next creative and interesting thing you try. So where can people find you and get scare mail and go find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, real easy, davidviergutz.com. I've got one location for everything. There's a contact form. If folks have questions, I'll do what I can to answer. Just give me some time. All about what I have to offer is in one place.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, it has been a delight. And I hope you have a really great holiday season and a lot of people take you up on so many of the cool things that you offer.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. So, folks, we'll be back next week with another guest speaker, guest co-host. We love to try to find really fantastic, cool people. So if you know someone, feel free to let us know over at contact@sellmorebookshow.com. But we'll be back next week. I hope everybody has a great week of book selling, and we'll talk to you soon for episode 557. Bye, everyone.